India cannot live without coal. Our country is a developing country. Coal is one of the major resources for Indians. If we stop the coal production under the pressure of the world community, then how can we maintain our livelihood?
पहले रहल तो सामा को दो खाद पियत रही और बीमारी नहीं पकड़ थी। घर में जो था वो खा कर पड़े हैं, बीमारी का कोई चिंता नहीं। अब तो तुरंत बीमारी आती है, तुरंत नहीं जाना अस्पताल तो तुरंत मर जाएगा।
अब पहले ऐसा तो नहीं होता था, लेकिन जब से ये कंपनी आई है तब से ये पूरा प्रक्रिया चालू है।
Hello and welcome to All Indians Matter. I am Ashraf Engineer. There was a stark dichotomy in India's approach at the recently concluded COP27 climate summit in Egypt. As the environment minister boarded the flight to Sharm el-Sheikh, the finance minister made an announcement that seemed at odds with India's stated objective of leading the world on climate action. Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman kicked off India's biggest ever coal mine auction with 141 new sites on the block, saying, India needs greater investment in coal production. Stop quote. Burning coal is perhaps the most polluting method of generating electricity. It's not lost on anyone that our survival hinges on a drastic reduction of harmful emissions, and that is precisely what the world's leaders were trying to lay a roadmap for at COP27. It's a strange way of doing things. You go about achieving decarbonization while implementing the biggest ever push for domestic coal production. As things stand, coal accounts for 70% of power generation in India, while renewables account for 12%.
All Indians matter.
The auction I'm referring to was the sixth and largest the government has held since 2020. A majority of the sites allocated for mines, known as coal blocks in bureaucratic parlance, are in our most ecologically fragile spots and in tribal areas. These communities will be destroyed by the coal projects. The mines will lead to the loss of thousands of hectares of forests, affect the flow of rivers, and displace tribals. Forests are sinks of carbon dioxide, so it's a double whammy when you chop them down in order to mine and burn coal. These actions are also at odds with Prime Minister Narendra Modi's attempt to position himself as a global environmental leader. At a recent G20 meeting, he said, India is committed to clean energy and environment, stop quote. Yet, we have the auctions, and India has made it clear that it will burn coal for decades to come amid the push for renewables. In fact, at COP26 in Glasgow last year, India made a late intervention to dilute the language of the agreement, changing the commitment to quote-unquote phase down rather than quote-unquote phase out coal power. This year, India argued that coal is primarily used by developing countries while other fossil fuels widely used by Western countries go unsanctioned. So, it argued, it's unfair to single out coal. India is the world's second largest importer of coal, and its domestic reserves are thought to be the fourth largest. It has argued that it is necessary to use coal for self-reliance and energy security, and the demand for electricity is growing steadily to achieve socio-economic development. Besides, India argues, the Russian invasion of Ukraine has sent other fossil fuel prices soaring. The fact that India is among the worst hit countries by climate change is not lost on anyone. You would remember the heat wave that destroyed crops and livelihoods earlier this year. In fact, there were extreme weather events on 80% of days in 2022. What's ironic is that multiple studies show that India's current coal mines and coal-fired power stations are enough to meet the growing demand so long as they are operated efficiently. The coal shortages in the summer of this year were not due to lack of domestic coal, but poor planning by power companies. According to an analysis by Global Energy Monitor, on average, India's coal mines use only 2/3 of the capacity, and some large ones use only 1%. Our coal-fired plants run at 50% and 70% capacity even during peak demand. Factor in low tariffs and delayed payments, and what you have is an unviable and highly polluting business. Incidentally, and I've spoken about this in earlier episodes, India's coal is way more polluting than imported coal. This is because of its high ash content. This means that it requires twice as much Indian coal to produce the same amount of power as imported coal. In fact, coal-based thermal power stations are responsible for over half of sulfur dioxide, 30% of oxides of nitrogen, and about 20% of particulate matter emissions in India, according to a study last year by the International Energy Agency's Clean Coal Center. It sounded an alarm bell recommending the implementation of emission norms at coal-based power stations immediately. Instead, last year, India extended by 2 years the deadline for coal-fired power plants to install equipment to cut sulfur emissions. This was the third pushback on a commitment to clean up dirty air. India had initially set a 2017 deadline for thermal power plants to install the emission-cutting units. That was changed to varying deadlines for different regions ending in 2022 and now extended to a period ending 2024. The Clean Coal Center study recommended that India shut old coal-fired power stations and criticized the quote-unquote lip service of the union government about running cleaner power plants. The government's hypocrisy is apparent. It is committed to, as part of the 2015 Paris Agreement, to run cleaner advanced technology. Yet, it is permitted for businesses in India to use less efficient technologies to burn coal. As a result, we have a situation in which the push for new coal mines and burning more coal is coming at the same time as environmental regulations are being watered down. So what are the numbers we are talking about? Domestic coal requirement is expected to rise to 1,018.2 million tons by 2031-32 from 678 million tons in 2021-22, according to the draft National Electricity Plan by the Central Electricity Authority. Simply put, coal consumption will rise 40%. There is an urgent need to speed up the renewable energy transition. India's goal is to have 408 gigawatts of green energy by 2030. This is almost as much as its total installed capacity, fossil and non-fossil combined at the moment. To achieve the goal, India will have to add 30 gigawatts each year. For perspective, India has added only 11.25 gigawatts on average from non-fossil sources since 2018. As a first step to enable the pivot away from coal, India needs to rethink import duties on renewable energy devices and components. India hiked this GST rate from 5% to 12% in October 2021 and imposed a basic customs duty of 40% on solar equipment effective April 1, 2022. While the objective was to reduce import dependence and encourage local production, India's capability is short of its growing demand. A reduction in duties would speed up the reach for renewable energy goals. Incidentally, not enough attention has been paid to wind power. India's potential stands at 302 gigawatts, but our installed capacity is only 39 gigawatts. The other challenge is our weak transmission grid. This is worsened when the power projects are in remote areas far from the large consumption centers. The weak transmission grid is why the 7.5 gigawatt solar project in Leh was cancelled in 2021. So the conclusion is clear. India must rethink its dependence on coal. Far from being cheap and reliable, it is usually costlier than necessary and available in smaller quantities than needed. It might be the easier option, but to believe that only coal can fulfill India's power demand or provide energy security is a fallacy.
Thank you all for listening. Please visit allindiansmatter.in, that's ALLINDIANSMATTER.in for more columns and audio podcasts. You can follow me on Twitter at Ashraf Engineer, that's ASHRAFENGINER, and All Indians Count, that's ALLINDIANSCOUNT. Search for the All Indians Matter page on Facebook. On Instagram, the handle is All Indians Matter. Email me at editor@allindiansmatter.in. Catch you again soon.